The media was initially critical of President Biden's handling of Afghanistan, but now some are providing cover for the commander-in-chief, especially when it comes to his call with the former Afghan president. MSNBC's Chris Hayes tweeting, telling the failing Afghan government to fake it till you make it as a means of extending its reign as long as possible is a sad statement on cumulative U.S. failures in Afghanistan, but not a scandal any more than the war itself was. And take a look at this commentary over President Biden facing intense criticism for leaving Americans behind in Afghanistan.
I think people should stop beating up on the administration so much, because no matter how it ended, everyone wasn't going to be happy with the way it ended. You can't get them all out in 5 minutes. You can't get them all out yesterday. So what happens going forward, if we continue with this effort to get them out and we start getting them out, as many out as possible, then I think that we should stop all, running around like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we left so many people behind. We don't know if we left them behind yet. We don't know yet.
All right, Dagan, let's start with you. Again, Don Lemon goes there too. You can't get everybody out in 5 minutes. It's sort of this straw man thing again, like, well, we couldn't stay there forever. Nobody's saying you stay there forever, and nobody's saying everybody gets out in 5 minutes.
Wait, he said we don't know if people were left behind. Actually, we do, because Joe Biden said
admitted
that we left people behind. CENTCOM Commander General Frank McKenzie, the day prior on Monday, said we left people behind. I didn't think it was possible for him to have less credibility, but I guess if you're a repellent gas bag, you want to be the most repellent, gassiest gas bag that you can possibly be. It's the same person who Greg has talked about over and over, dismissed and scoffed at violence and mayhem in the street and said, well, I went out to eat dinner and, we didn't see anything. We just saw, I digress, but they're trying to prop up somebody who has had the worst record of any politician on foreign policy ever. This commander-in-chief, again, wasn't for the raid to get Osama bin Laden. So what's the motive other than just to hear themselves talk?
I mean, there's a lot to dissect in what has happened over the last couple of weeks. And I'm hoping, I think we all do, that we'll have transparency and we'll get some answers about this. But Jessica, I'm old enough to remember when there was talk of the 25th Amendment over President Trump because of the way he held a glass or walked down a ramp. So it seems like there is a different standard for the way the media is handling some of these presidential decisions.
Yeah, they don't like President Trump, and they like President Biden. I mean, it's pretty simple. Like, I like my friends, and I don't like people who are not my friends.
Yeah.
I have been consistent, which I'm thrilled about, that I don't like talking about anyone's cognitive state. It is reckless. None of us are anyone's doctors, physical, mental, any of it. And I think all of that should have been left out of the conversation. So the point about the coverage, it's interesting because there is something going on far left media. So I know to a lot of conservatives, they just think like anything left is far left, but it's not true, right? So there's like progressive, then there's establishment, and then there's, people drifting towards the right. And the far left has been screaming at the medium left from the beginning that they are being too harsh on President Biden, like how, he's making good on all these promises. This is all Trump's deals. Trump's the one that released 5,000 Taliban fighters, et cetera. And when you look at the fact that the investigation into the withdrawal is being led by Bob Menendez, who is a huge ally of President Biden's, when you look at how much airtime someone like Congressman Seth Moulton is getting, right? He's leading MSNBC shows to talk about why he and Congressman Peter Meijer, who's a Republican, went over there and came back and said it is a complete debacle. That there are so many different realities to this coverage going on, depending on what denomination of political affiliation you are.
So, but Will, that may be then what people thought the media was 20 years ago, that there were divergent viewpoints and they were covering everything and trying to be fair and asking questions of the left and the right. So,
yeah, not to be argumentative, out of genuine curiosity, who would you define as the medium left media? Because I find it very hard to distinguish in 2021. It feels to me like they're all radical far left. So I'd be curious who's medium left.
Well, you don't have the special glasses I have where you
can
figure out what it is.
Right.
No, it's obviously, within networks, as there are anywhere, there are certain hosts that are more extreme that aren't. Like if you watched Jake Tapper's coverage, for instance, on CNN for the first couple weeks of this, he had more veterans on criticizing what was going on in Afghanistan than I would say some conservative-leaning media did.
Well, I would suggest we should ask all the medium left media members whether or not men can get pregnant. And we can find out if anyone truly has any rationality left within the medium left or the same as the radical left. I'll tell you what they are, though, is they're consistent. So, Dagan, we can give CNN some credit. So their media coverage is a little bit like their foreign policy advocacy. Close enough. That was close to truth. You know what? we kind of got them all out, like a game of horseshoes, you know? We're kind of close to the pin. We might have left a couple thousand. Close enough. That's what Lemon seems to be advocating for. Close enough is good enough, just like his adherence to the truth. I think, really quickly, Shane, the more offensive tweet you could have showed from Chris Hayes is the one where on the day 13 servicemen died, he said, well, for context, 13 Americans died from COVID today. He compared an act of terrorism and violence to a pandemic. And the reason he did that is because while there's a clear bad guy when it comes to terrorism, the left increasingly wants to paint their fellow American as our true enemy, as the bad guy, and the true American there would be masking or vaccination. The bad guys in their mind are their fellow Americans, and that's why on that day he wanted to point it to COVID.
Greg, I feel like you have something to say. You're itching over here.
No, I'm not. I like your color against the blue. It's very nice.
Do you want to see it again?
Yeah, it was very. Look at that. It pops. I love how Don Lemon says lay off Joe because we don't know. We don't know if we left anybody behind. Since when did ignorance of facts keep CNN from saying anything? If that were the new criteria, the CNN would just be one long test pattern punctuated by the voice of James Earl Jones going, this is CNN. Because that's all they do. They've never cared whether they knew something or not. Our problem is other countries have propaganda, but it's directed outward to their adversaries or their other countries, their rivals. Our propaganda in our country is directed inward. You have people that claim to be news anchors, but they're actually commentators. We don't claim to be news anchors except for Shannon, because she is. I'm not. We aren't. We just talk.
It's news to me. Greg.
Yes, it is. But they, over at CNN, they pretend to be commentators and they're propagandizing for Joe Biden. So so all of a sudden what you're going to see is you're going to see them pivot, which they did on MSNBC this morning. I think they led with January 6th, the phone call that Jim Jordan made to Trump. That was what they led
Wait, so we're
with.
back to phone calls.
Yeah, we're back to that phone call. So what you're seeing is you're going to see the pivot, and they're going to treat January 6th like a CPR dummy and just keep trying to revive it all the way through next year because that's the only thing they have. And meanwhile, they see this as no big deal. That's propaganda, and we direct it at ourselves.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.